Welcome to another wonderful episode of Waves of Wisdom. I'm your host, Yas Wahid. And in this episode of Waves of Wisdom, we are joined by Ritu Mehrish, a leadership expert, speaker, best-selling author who's redefining how leaders should show up authentically and resilience and impact. Ritu is the author of Leaders Block, which is a book which has touched my heart, and we will talk about it. A groundbreaking book that shines a light on the silent struggles many high-performing leaders face when they lose motivation, confidence, clarity. Her latest release, Rewrite the Rules, a Straits Times bestseller, celebrates women leaders in Asia who are challenging outdated norms and transforming the leadership paradigm. With over 2 decades of leadership experience at global giants like Procter Gamble and GE, Ritu led business teams across the US, Singapore, India, Europe. Today, she works with leaders and organizations worldwide, helping them navigate their setbacks and lead with renowned purpose. She also hosts the Black Belt in Leadership podcast and contributes thought leadership to thrive in a global scale. Whether through her writing, coaching, or speaking, Ritu's mission to help leaders connect with power and lead in a way that both affects the human. Welcome to the show, Ritu.
Thank you so much, Yas. And that was such a wonderful introduction. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Ritu, you have had an extraordinary career across corporate boardrooms, coaching rooms, and global stages. But if we were to strip away all the titles you had and all the accolades you have got up to today, for our viewers, tell who you are really.
Wow, that's a deep question. That's a really deep question. And I'm going to give you a little longish answer for that because this question was posed to me even in reality. So to give you a little bit of a backstory, in 2014, I had completed 20 years in the corporate world. I had, I was that time working with GE Capital. I was the vice president of a business vertical. And I decided in 2015 to do something of my own, okay? Which was literally what you asked me, was stripping me off of all the titles, the business card. And I found myself in that situation where I was new in a country. So I had just relocated to Singapore. I had just quit my job. I was trying to figure out what to do. And it was actually almost redefining myself. When I met people, when I had to introduce myself, I actually struggled to say, who am I? And, when I went to big conferences, everybody was exchanging business cards, but I had no business card, right? So I actually lived that question for many years. It's now that it's been 10 years, I have been doing what I do to a point where I think, I feel more confident about introducing myself and about saying who I am. But I struggled for about a year and a half, trying to figure out who am I if I'm not that person or that vice president of a business vertical in GE. But today, when somebody asks me, who am I? I'm a person who's trying to live my life very intentionally, trying to create the future which I wish to see in the world. And I play multiple roles. So, of course, I'm a mother. That's my number one role in the world, actually, right now, because I have 2 young kids. I'm a daughter to my aging parents. I'm a wife to my spouse. And, and then I'm a person who's trying to contribute and make an impact by amplifying voices of other women leaders in the region and also helping leaders as they are charting their path. So in a nutshell, combination of all this is who makes, who am I if I were to define it. So long answer to your short question.
It's a wonderful answer. I think we all sometimes we try to define ourselves as professional speakers, as a CEO, as somebody, but actually we are as a human we are a whole being, right? We have so many other responsibilities and other affiliations with our life. So Ritu, what was the moment you realized um, you are meant to help leaders, and especially the leaders block?
Right. Iyas, again, there's a little bit of a story behind it because I'm a big believer that whatever we do has a little bit of a story behind, right? Like very few
Yeah.
things in life just happen by chance. Somehow they're a culmination of a lot of things we do. So what happened was, like I was telling you in 2015, when I decided, okay, I wanted to do something with people, supporting them, but I didn't know how, okay? But I wanted to do something in this space. And as I started to speak with leaders, with some of my colleagues that I knew, some of the people I knew in general, as I started to speak with people in the corporate world, I realized that everybody I spoke with wanted their leaders to be more effective, more productive, more profitable. But nobody was really talking about what are the challenges that leaders go through when they are leading, whether when they're
Mhm.
leading a business, whether when they're leading a team, or when they're going through a change. They all face challenges. But who do they speak with? Or what
Yeah.
happens to them? Uh, you know, and it was quite fascinating for me to see that we just assume leaders know everything. And that's not true, because I had, by that time, I had been a leader for last 10 years of my career. I was leading really big teams, and I realized that I had struggled at multiple points in times in those 10 years too. And I realized, and I will tell that story maybe later, but I had really struggled, and I had also seen my colleagues around me struggle. So there was this question that I had in my mind, that what if I could help leaders normalize these challenges? What if I could create a space where leaders could talk about their challenges very openly without a taboo attached to it, without that inhibitions that, oh, if I share, will I be judged, and things like that, right? Um, and one of the first things, and you will know this, Ayaz, is that if there's a problem, if as humans we don't name it, we always want
Mhm.
a name for something, right? Because if we don't name it, we don't recognize it, and we don't even acknowledge it. Forget about doing something to overcome it. So I realized, okay, maybe there's a name for such a situation where brilliant leaders just get stuck with something, whether it's a big change, whether it's a big transformation that the organization is going on, whether it's personal or professional. There are these phases, right? And that's how the word leaders block came into being. I coined that word, and the similarity was, just as best of writers go through writer's block, best of leaders go through leaders block. It's a temporary phase where leaders are unable to perform on top of their game. It's a temporary phase where they feel demotivated, disengaged, or uninspired. And it's temporary, and that was the key operative word, that it's temporary. You recognize it, you acknowledge it, and then you take certain actions to overcome it. So that was really the genesis of leaders block.
Wonderful. Yeah. I remember meeting you in 2019 for the first time, I think, and then when you were attending the Modi's HR convention. And then
That's right.
I got your Leaders Block book signed. But I would be very frank, Ritu. Unfortunately, I haven't touched that book until the lockdown. But when the lockdown
Yeah.
hit, even personally, it went through. I was trying to go. I was getting into some kind of emotional downturn, which I've never experienced before, because we had,
Yeah.
for example, immediately our incomes has been stripped off, and then our, we don't know what's next. And also when you have a family, you don't know, and total transportation was cut off from the Maldives,
Yeah.
and it was a hard time. So
Yeah.
even there are days, you wouldn't believe, even there are days I'm not sure what I will feed my kids tomorrow,
Yeah.
because the supplies were, because Maldives is like 99% of the stuff we import, right? And
That's right.
even fishermen were not going out for fishing because of the COVID pandemic. So even the even the only resource we have in Maldives, we cannot get. So we have to try to find means to even save food and save things for tomorrow. And but that really had on hard on me. So immediately when I was thinking about how to come out of that struggle, that thing, I immediately thought of recall of your speech at the convention, and I thought, okay, let's take the Leader's Block book and read it through. Believe me, when I started reading it, I got hooked on it so much. I didn't stop until I finished reading, except for sleeping. I think because we are staying at home doing nothing. So
Yes.
in 2 days, I went through the book. I read it. I tried to apply things in it. Even when the police have asked us not to go out, but you have mentioned that you should go out for a walk or something like that, I at least walk around my block and then try to get things out of my head. And this is, I think it is very, very powerful. So this is just sharing with you some of my personal experiences I went through. So what was the experience or moment in your life actually when you were inspired? Actually, you just mentioned that so many people are going through. In your personal journey, what was the moment you were inspired to come up with this concept?
Right. So, firstly, thank you so much for sharing. That the book, that the book had a small impact on you.
Not small, big, I believe.
Very kind of you. And you're right. COVID. If I were to just kind of continue that thread, COVID is a time where I think I went through some kind of a block too, because, as you mentioned, 2019, my book had come out. I had some really great opportunities to be speaking around the world in 2020. My calendar looked like really good because it had some really big conferences where I was supposed to speak, the ones and my book was out. So everything was really looking upward for 2020. In fact, in February, I was supposed to travel um, to Mauritius actually to talk about the book and run some programs around it. And then from there, everything got canceled, right? So my calendar was totally blocked out in 2022. I mean, was totally wiped out. And, where in a point I was like, what am I going to do? Because I was so focused on 2019, getting that calendar blocked through these speaking gigs. And then suddenly you see everything getting wiped out. Right, and almost like to your point, saying, okay, there's going to be very little income. Where am I generating money from? So, in fact, it's funny you took that, because that was the time I flipped on my own book too, to see, okay, what can I do? What can I take some of these things that I've written? What can I read again and start? So I'm glad it worked like that for you, because I had a similar experience, and I actually did pivot to my book to read what are some other things I can do. But I'm so glad all that is behind us. So going back to your question about what inspired me to write the book, was, like I said, as I spoke to these leaders, but also as I got deeper into coaching leaders, I realized there was a pattern I was noticing. These leaders that I was coaching were all very brilliant. They were obviously leading big organizations, big teams, but yet they were, in our conversation, we would talk about things that they probably didn't feel okay to talk about to anybody else in the organization. And that's when I thought, okay, it seems to be not one-off. It doesn't seem to be like one person going through this. It's more widespread. In fact, in the book, I say that as I spoke to more people, I realized leaders' block is like, it's like a cold. Everybody gets it, literally. I mean, it's like a flu. Everybody gets it. But then what happened was, as I started talking to leaders, I was like, okay, I think there is something there. Can I speak to more leaders? Can I interview more leaders to understand, is there a phenomena only I am seeing, or is it in real, right? So I wanted to test my hypothesis. So I spoke to about 10, 20, 30 leaders initially. And every single one of them, as I described to them, every single one of them said, yes, they've had a phase in their career when they did not feel on top of their game, for whatever reason. That then kind of emboldened me to say, okay, can I talk to more people? And for the book, I spoke about 100 people. And Yas, you'll be surprised, which I wasn't really surprised, but every single one of them said, yes, they've had a phase like this, right? So I tested that hypothesis and then I thought, okay, this is real. And that really led me to dive deeper into understanding what were some of their triggers, what happened, what were some of the symptoms, and then what did they do to overcome that phase. And then of course I built in a little bit of my research and things like that. So I think it was just conversations that was really was instrumental in me writing the book and saying, okay, there's something deeper there.
Yeah, I think that's a great discovery because this is especially with being a man and who was in the executive level for many years. I realized
Yeah.
this is something we don't share with other
No.
people. Maybe very few people might have coaches as well. You might know, right?
Correct.
So from your experience, these successful executives, leaders you have interviewed, what are they struggling about, or what are their struggles, and how these and what does, like I mentioned, it is not in our culture or day-to-day activities to share these things with others.
Yeah.
So what does that say about organizational culture or our behavior, which we need to change?
Yeah. And a lot of people I spoke with, they said that it was so therapeutic for them to speak about it, right?
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things, Yas, was that, which kind of, that time I didn't think about it, but later on I started saying, people who I interviewed were not necessarily people I knew very closely. Some of them were, but what happened was I asked people who I knew to introduce me to two more people. So there were a lot of interviews that happened over the phone. I had never met the person. They had never met me. We had never seen each other on video. And for them, it was very therapeutic to share all of those because one, we didn't know each other, so there wasn't a fear of judgment. And secondly, my aha moment came when after 20, 30 leaders, I told them, look, I have spoken to 20, 30 leaders and every single one of them have said, yes, they've gone through this. And there was almost this sigh of relief in the sense they thought, because before that, they thought they were the only ones who had these struggles. And when you start to talk about it, people are like, oh my God, I'm not the only one. And that lifts a lot of weight off your shoulders of leaders when suddenly in a room where you realize, oh, everybody around me has had this phase, or everyone around me feels like that at some stage or the other in their career. And then therefore then you suddenly feel, oh, it's not me, there's nothing wrong with me, it's a natural thing, it's a normal thing, right? So when you normalize it, people feel more comfortable sharing about it. And the triggers were quite varied actually. So I'll tell you some of the top 2, 3 common ones that came out from those conversations. One is whenever there was a big transition, people always found themselves feeling stuck. So for example, if you were, let's say, leading a big, leading a function which you're very familiar with, now suddenly either within the organization or outside, you've been asked to lead something else, which is totally a new territory to you. Leaders want to ask for help, but they don't ask for help because they're struggling in that. That's a phase where people found, oh, what should I do? Or if people were in the same role for a lot of time where they were getting role fatigue, that's again a term I use in the book, when they started to kind of get bored in their role, when there was not enough intellectual stimulation for them, right? Enough problems for them to solve. That's when, and again, they felt totally drained out, demotivated. And mind you, a lot of time leaders on paper or externally were doing absolutely fine. So leaders block a lot of time is also an internal thing, right? Like your KPIs could be green. You could be, somebody from outside would think, oh, you've got a great job, you've got a great position, you're doing well. So it wasn't so much external as much as it was internal. Sometimes it was your own personal challenge that you were going through, that kind of led you to a phase where, again, you were demotivated or disengaged. So there are multiple reasons, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this is a great discovery and a topic which a lot of people don't talk about, like you mentioned, and you have tried to make this mainstream, and now also with the topic about mental health, health and well-being, and all those areas.
Yeah.
So this is really now is becoming mainstream. So I think you're doing a phenomenal job in that aspect as well. But what does leaders block feel like from the inside, and
Yeah.
why it is so hard to people to tell it aloud?
Yeah.
That like, yeah. Go ahead.
Correct. The point that you're making, I think it's the societal pressure, or it's
Mhm.
the story that we tell ourselves that, we are supposed to be infallible. Leaders are supposed to, I jokingly say leaders are not superheroes. They are humans. And as long as
Mhm.
leaders are humans, they will falter, they will fumble, they will fail. And that's absolutely fine. You have to accept that, right? What leaders block feels like internally there's this feeling of, is there something wrong with me? Am I failing myself? Am I failing the organization? Am I failing the team? Right, you're second guessing yourself. You're almost thinking, oh my god, I thought I was so bright, and now what's happening? Is my career doomed? Right, so all that negative spiral starts. It also shows up in your behavior. When you're going through something like this, you can't, you won't be, you'll get more irritable, you are more, disengaged. So it shows up like that in your personal life too. So it doesn't just stick to your professional life. And I think the reason why leaders and the organizations find it difficult is because we've kind of made our leaders demigods almost, right? Like we look up to our
Yeah.
leaders like they have solutions for everything in the world. And one of the things I hope leaders can do, that once they've gone through it themselves, if they can start to talk to their teams that, look, it's a normal phenomena. People go through it. If you're going to have a career of
Yeah.
20, 30, 40 years, there will be phases. It's like it's like a sport, right? If you think about a sports person, even in sports, even the best of athletes have off seasons, or there are seasons when they're not on top of their game. What do?
Mhm.
They take time off, right? They refresh, they practice, and then they come back to the game. But
They
somehow
retreat.
leaders are not,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Leaders are somehow not allowed that. And that's what sometimes it's baffling to me. Why are we putting leaders and ourselves as leaders,
Mhm.
through such high standards where you can't have a bad quarter, or you can't have a bad month or so, because it's not humanly possible for anybody to consistently keep performing. And
Is it because
organizations need to really, yeah, no, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, is it because the society sees the leader as someone like you mentioned, they are not superhumans, but they are not superheroes, but they have some kind of like status where they are seen
Correct.
as even as they have like even the junior people or the people at the top of
Yeah.
these leaders, certain leaders who are really in the C-suite also. Do is there an expectation for them to continue this performance, and they are not supposed to take breaks or retreats or even for
Right.
some extent leave even, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
is it because of a general belief that they are having this they are uncomfortable with talking about it and taking time off or something like that?
Yeah, I think you rightly said. It is this whole norm or belief. And I'm hoping that more and more leaders can change. If I were to talk about a global leader who comes to my mind, who's changing this narrative and who successfully changed this narrative that you can do all of this and yet have a great business, is Satya Nadella. He
Yeah.
came, I mean, he leads with empathy. He changed the whole organization's culture at Microsoft about, being more empathetic, and yet, under his leadership, the company has just gone places, right? So it is a great case to kind of make, just, because you're empathetic, you open up, you're vulnerable, doesn't mean your business will suffer, doesn't mean you will soften. And I think, Iyaz, if you allow me, this is where a segue into, women leaders come in. I think women
Mhm.
leaders are so much more open about sharing, what they feel, or they're more empathetic. They allow space for people to share. And again, and I guess, sometimes other leaders need to learn from that. So they are really good examples now. And whenever I talk to leaders through my programs or through speaking, I always say, start with you. Can you share with your teams? And you don't have to be a C-suite leader, even if you're a middle manager, with your teams. Can you start to share stories when you didn't succeed, or where you failed, or where you are feeling stuck? You can get your teams and talk about it. So I'll give you a small example. For me, I don't have a big team now. I have a very small team. But even at home, with my kids, if there are days I'm not feeling on top of things, the days where I'm not really kind of, thing, I tell them. I'm like, guys, I just tell my kids. I have two kids. I'm like, mommy is not in a great couple of days. So I'm going to be irritable. I'm going to be like this. I give them a heads up, and I tell them. And they're like, oh, mommy, what happened? They'll kind of, because I need that support, right? We all need that support when how we operate. And I really hope we can do more of that, with people around us, whether it's home, whether it's our teams, because when we do it, we allow others to do it rather than waiting for others to do it. We can ourselves be that example.
Yeah. So you brought up a very important topic, I think, women leadership, and there are so many things because the leadership spectrum for many, many centuries has been redefined very masculine way, and
Yeah.
it is considered kind of becoming what to say, it is like a leader is not good enough, or it is a weakness when they show empathy or kindness, or more feminine aspect of
Yeah.
leadership. It was considered as a weakness for the male leaders, right? So I think you're very right. This is something the male leaders can really learn from female leaders. So we will deep dive into this topic and into your recent book as well. But before we go, as a female leader, what uh, what made you an incident or something which you can share, which made you burn out, and what you were able to learn from that incident and led to maybe you even leaving the corporate world, or I don't know, led to
Yeah.
some major changes in your life.
So for me, it's very interesting, right? Because when we think about a women leader, there are certain expectations of you. There's certain, people want you to behave a certain way and things like that. So I'll give you an example,
Mm,
which is a little bit counterintuitive. So I was still with GE, when I had my first child. I went on my maternity break. When I came back with a young child, I took on a role which was quite different from what I was doing earlier. So it was a role which didn't, which was more smaller team. I wasn't traveling. I had decent working hours. And I basically anything to keep it stable. Like I didn't want to travel with a young child, and that was fine, right? But I'll tell you, Yas, those 18 months were actually the most miserable months of my career, because I was doing a role that I didn't really enjoy. I was somebody who loved leading teams. I was somebody who loved being in front of the customer. I was somebody who loved kind of, being on the go. And here for 18 months, I was in the stable job, stable role. And I remember after that, I went on my second maternity break. And when I was coming back, my husband had told me before, he said, look, please don't take up a role for the sake of stability. Do something that you really enjoy. And very counterintuitive to what everybody would think, that okay, with my second child I needed stability. In fact, my HR, with all the right intentions, said, oh, Ritu, now you have two young ones, I'm sure you're looking for something which is more stable, and which is, I was like, no, I want a bigger operating role. And I actually took on a bigger operating role after my second child, where I was traveling a lot, where I was, leading a huge team. I was leading a team of 1,000 people that time across 8 different countries, 5 continents. So like really 24/7, and I loved it. Even though one would think, oh, with two small kids, how would you? Now the thing is, I did not feel so much of guilt, but I was all the time made to feel that if I was at the client side again with all the right intention, they would like, oh my god, how do you do this with 2 young kids, or don't you miss your kids, or things, right? So it's like, yeah, I know, but you have kids too, and you've traveled here too, right? But nobody really asked that of a male leader. But because I was a female leader, I was constantly asked this, that how do you do this, you have 2 young kids, so it's, and those are things which you realize, again, they all had the right intentions, but you kind of realize that there is a certain expectation of a women leader, that just because now I have 2 young kids, I'm supposed to do a certain kind of role. Right, so those are some of the incidents that stated. In fact, as recent as a couple of years back, again, I was facilitating in another country, and over lunchtime, somebody said, Ritu, when you travel, who looks after your kids? And I just turned around, I smiled, and I said, they have a father for a reason. So, so those are kind of things that you constantly get asked as a woman leader, or now as a women speaker or a women facilitator. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're very lucky you have a support system like that. And this is an important question. I think even male leaders need to ask. Even when I had my first kid, and then my wife was struggling a little bit in terms of because every first child is not easy for a mother.
Absolutely.
And then, but I didn't realize that, I only had that masculine leadership within myself at that time. So I thought, okay, my role is to work hard and provide for the family. So after, it took me years to realize actually that even a father need to give time to their children, and it is all about how you manage your time, and so we cannot allocate roles. Okay, this is only a mom's role to look after kid.
Correct.
Only a day's role to look after kid, but it's a matter of the family dynamics and how it's whole thing is. And then how we like in my last episode with Dr. Safia, she came up with a nice word which says it's about work-life blend. So instead of trying to balance it, how you blend this together is actually where you achieve the success, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, Yas, on that, Yas, just completing on that, I love the blend, work-life balance. I also like to call it work-life integration.
Yes.
Again, you're integrating both into each other. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's almost same thing in a different way, but it's the whole idea is, I think the message is not try to avoid one thing and do the other thing, but rather combine those two, and then how we can calibrate our life in such a way, right? So when you are helping with leaders through coaching and all these things, what does you think the leaders are suffering most, actually, in terms of leaders block, or well-being, or mental health?
I mean, it's difficult to point out one thing, but in general, what I've realized, if I were to just generalize and look across the spectrum, whether it's men, women in general, I think finding that safe space to talk about their challenges. I think that is something that I constantly see leaders struggle with. And that's why, luckily, coaching is becoming more acceptable. People want a coach to work through some of these things, because then there is no fear of judgment. There is no fear of, they don't feel threatened. And secondly, also, it's an objective view. Sometimes as a coach, when you come in and you hear somebody's thing, you can just play out the perspectives that you see, and which, when you're as a leader, when you're in thick of things, or when you're just in that center of things, you probably don't have that perspective. And I think coach beautifully does it for you. So I would say the challenge I see with most of the leaders is looking for that space where they can genuinely share what they are going through, and doesn't have to be big challenges. Sometimes it could be small things, sometimes it could be big things, and therefore, looking for having like-minded communities are important, just as coaches are important. Yeah, so I would say finding that space.
Yeah, we even talk about your I agree with you. A lot of times it is the space and the facilities available and the acceptability of these things. Even
That's
like
correct.
you mentioned, coaching, for example, in Moody's, we know for a fact we have got our first batch of ICF coaches, and I'm also one of them. Graduated
Nice.
last year, but now it is slowly becoming, people are becoming aware of, okay, this is something you can still do, because everybody was thinking, okay, when you have really, when you need help only when you are in depression, you need to go to a
Correct.
counselor or a psychologist or a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
Until that level you don't need help, but
Yeah.
a coach can actually help to reframe your thinking and ways, so that you don't fall into that pit in the future, right? So
Absolutely.
is very important about as well. So we also talk about the feminine leadership and about women leaders. So what do you think, as a female leader, what were the limiting beliefs you had which actually stopped you becoming who you are today in an earlier stage of your life?
Yeah, I think for me, like I said, one of it is more of how, okay, if I were to think back like 20 years back, when I started off, I think you start off very fiercely. And I think even when I was young in my 20s, I started off very fiercely, didn't even think about being a woman or anything like that, right? Like you just kind of, you're on the go, you don't feel anything. But along the way, there are certain, you start to pick up things which are expected of you, whether from a society or from a corporate world, which hopefully is now changing. I'm talking, 2000, which is about 25 years back. That was the first time, actually, even late 90s. That's when I started working. The norms are quite different, right? You start off very fierce, but then there's certain expectations out of you. If there's a meeting happening nowadays, nobody take notes because it's all automated. But earlier, people used to take notes. Somebody used to be a scribe for notes, right? And people always looked for, oh, who could take notes? And typically, whether if I was a woman or somebody else in the team, people would typically look at us and say, okay, can you take notes? And the excuse used to be, oh, you girls have good handwriting, so it was a left-handed compliment, right? It is a
Yeah.
compliment, but do the work. If we were organizing something in office, oh, you girls are good at organizing, put together this. So sometimes you didn't realize it, that they were so subtle, that you thought, oh, like there's this expectation. Like I was telling you, the narrative, till I had my kids, when I got married and I have two kids and I was still working, even that was shaped by the narrative around that, as a woman, you're supposed to do this. So those were some of the things I felt into that trap too, saying, oh, I should not raise my hand for this. It's not for me, or there is a certain way I'm supposed to behave and things like that. So I think more than the beliefs, it was more the society norms, so to say, or the corporate norms. And like as you said, I have worked globally, I worked with global organizations, but even there is always that little subtle thing about, being a woman leader, which is changing. I must say that now that I see, women leaders doing so well, and we have a long way to go, but I think definitely we've come a long way from there.
Yeah. Yeah, this is where I think the idea of your latest book, Rewrite the Rules, have come up. celebrating women leaders in Asia. And I have seen you have written a lot of blogs and some of your podcasts I have listened in this area. If you were to rewrite something in your life, what is it?
Ooh, that's a question I ask a lot of my leaders too. Um,
Yeah.
if I were to rewrite one rule, um, let me think, what would that be? Um, yeah, I think I would, there, so I'll give you a long story again. There's no short answer to that. When
Yeah.
I started off, there have been times where I wasn't such a great leader. So I'll give you an example. I started leading teams when I was quite young early on, and I had 10, 15 people that time. And I remember I was in my early 20s, single, and I had team members who were women. And I remember, there was a woman who had just got married. And I was talking to my team, and I didn't realize it. I still very distinctly remember telling my HR, hey, we were hiring for two positions, and I told my HR, hey, I don't want to marry, I don't want to hire two recently married people in my team because soon they're going to go on maternity break.
Mm-hmm.
And now when I think of it, it is not something I'm proud of. And it's also something that I feel so kind of, so guilty of, that as a woman, I was ready and I was making that judgment, which was so wrong, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is that incident that has stuck with me for a really long time. Whenever I look back, I think, if I could change something about it, but also if I could educate the younger leaders about this, because I was young, I wasn't experienced, I wasn't married, right? And I didn't think of all these things. And I wish somebody had told me this, that, this is, again, if I tell somebody, they're like, of course it looks wrong. It is wrong. But 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 my KPIs were to get stuff done, right? And I wanted the most efficient team. But this element of how do you kind of look at, how do you bring that human element to workspace? I think if
Was
I were taught that earlier.
Yeah. Can you say that that thinking process was framed by the existing culture of masculinity in the leadership?
I mean, it was driven purely by results, right?
Right.
It was like, okay, we just need to get results. And, if you get results, you keep moving up in your career, right? So very blinkers on, result oriented, efficiency oriented, you're ambitious, and that's what you get awarded for. Right. So
So,
if I could rewrite a rule, it could be, don't just focus on what you achieve, but how you achieve is the key.
I think that's the important message. And can you say this is the story, or this is the reason why you wrote this book, or is there any other story?
Uh, like I said, I think this incident has weighed heavily on me. And I talk about it because I talk about it as a mistake I made that I want to share, that others don't make it, right? Um, the other thing, actually, the other reason why for this book was also that I work with some organization to develop their women leaders, and in the region, in Asia, basically. And one of the things I realized, that they are great books, frameworks, but all of them are written with a Western lens. And actually, our Asian society has nuances that don't get covered in those things, right? Whether it's society, whether it's socio-economic, whether it's cultural, there's a lot of difference. Examples in those books or in those articles are not directly relevant, or are not very relevant, because as a society, we are different. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to write a book with the Asia focus. That, while we are asking women leaders to do different things, but we also have to keep in mind the society, or why certain behaviors are so inbuilt in us because of our cultural, construct. And the other thing was that the other reason for writing the book was also there are such great and amazing women leaders in Asia, but we don't hear their stories enough. Every time I talk to a younger women leaders, I ask them, about role models, and they'll give me names like Michelle Obama or Oprah Winfrey, and there's nothing wrong, right? They're great leaders, but they are not relatable role models, right? So I
Yeah.
wanted to bridge that gap by amplifying voices of these women leaders so that we can create more what I call relatable role models for the emerging women leaders. So combination of a lot of things.
Yeah. I think this is amazing work and something, a lot of Asians as culturally also, and even socioeconomic,
Yeah,
it is not same as the Europe or the Western countries, right?
that's right.
But it doesn't mean that the Asian leaders are doing a lesser job or
Absolutely.
actually adding less value to the world economy as such, right? And also culturally sometimes,
Yeah.
I mean, one of the greatest leaders I have seen, people not who has not built empires, but people have built massive families, like
Yeah.
having 9 kids, like my grandmother, for example, right? So great leaders in a way. um,
Yes.
so if you were to bring out one story or one single person, a great leader, as a role model from the interviews from your book, who would be, and what is her story like?
So it'll be difficult to pinpoint one
Okay.
because that'll not be doing justice to all the other stories. But they've been whoever I spoke to has been so inspirational. Some women who've made big career shifts. Some women who came from such humble backgrounds and have become such, have attained so much on their own terms. There are stories of women leaders who've actually pivoted to social enterprises or to starting something on their own, non-profits, and there are stories of women who've risen through corporate ladder on their own terms without feeling burnt out or without having to behave like a male leader. um, so I think there are lots of stories there, and each one of them has been really inspirational, and that's how the work still continues through the podcast, because I continue to interview these
Yeah.
ladies to amplify voices of these women leaders even though the book is completed. Because the idea is that through the platform, if we can take their stories to the world, then why not?
Yeah. I think it's a great platform, and less talked about topic which you have taken, and which need to be amplified,
Yeah.
definitely. So you have interviewed so many of these leaders, male and female, for both of your books, and you have worked at very high corporate jobs. So given your knowledge and experience and the learnings you have acquired from these people, how how would you define success now, and how that has changed over time?
Yeah, and that's a really great question. In fact, in the book, we have a chapter on the success rule,
Mhm.
and we basically say success versus growth, right? So for me, when I was younger, success
Yeah.
parameters were different versus what they're different now. Even now, success to me it's more growth than success, actually. To me, success is more external, more validation, whereas growth comes from having learning, a continuous growth, things like that. For me, the parameters that defined me as successful have changed now. Earlier in my corporate life, success meant, how quickly did you get promoted?
Mhm.
Were you in the top 20 or not, right? Which assignments are you putting your hand up for? Or are you getting selected for which projects? Like all that defined success. Now, for me, that has shifted a lot. Now it's about, okay, what am I working on, which is enabling me to learn, to contribute, and to make an impact. So for me right now, the success criteria is very simple. I pick things and projects where I get to do all three things: where I get to learn, where I get to contribute, where I get to make an impact, and lastly, where I also get to have fun. If any of them is missing, I don't stick around doing that for too long. So now it's very clear to me.
Yeah. I think that's a great way of defining success, that we touched best earlier as well. Now, let's come to the topic which I am passionate at these days, which is about how to redefine the retirement. So, like you are rewriting the rules of leadership for women leaders, I like to redefine what is the retirement, which I call becoming unretirable.
Nice.
It is so that is basically what I'm saying is find your passion and find a passion and purpose in life and hang on to it, so you don't have to really retire like in the traditional sense, right? So how do you view retirement as of today, for personally for you and for a lot of leaders you have spoken?
Yeah. Look, if I were to talk about myself, I don't think of retirement, frankly saying, because I'm like, till I can do what I'm doing, why would I retire, right? Like, so that's one thing. It's also because, like I was saying, till I'm doing things that fulfill those 4 criterias, or at least 3 out of those 4 criterias, I will continue to do what I'm doing. So I don't see. I may shift, I may pivot, right? I may take on different kind of projects, or I may do something different. But I retire to me is like when you stop doing something, right? So I don't see myself retiring anytime soon, not even thinking about it. And even to think about, actually, if you think about retirement, right? Traditionally, it was kind of defined as when you stopped working, working as in the traditional sense of going to office and working. But nowadays, I think even that is changing. I know so many leaders who are about to retire from their companies, as in, they exit their organization, but then they probably take a little bit of a break or think through, but they're doing something else, right? Either they're advising others, or they found a passion that they're pursuing. So I don't think so. And in fact, to your question, I'm just thinking, even when you speak to leaders who are probably in their 40s and things like that, who are thinking about, okay, what's the next phase? There is this whole 2.0 phase of your life, right? Which is about, find what you really enjoy doing, find your passion. And I know everybody says find your passion, and that can evolve too. Right? So to be open to experiences, and then see what happens. I don't, the concept of earlier at 65 retire, not work, I think that's going out of the window, because also age spans are becoming longer. So if you're going to live till 80, 85, what will you do for the next 20 years if you retire at 65, right?
Yeah. I think that's very important message. And one of the things which I talk about is actually not waiting till the retirement age. So how do you think, what do you think somebody can do to become unretirable even way before their retirement age?
Yeah. So I will say 2 things. There is a concept that I like to talk about. It's called, of course, one is finding passion, like what you really like to do. But then if I were to convert that into what you can do while you're still working, there's a concept called skill stacking. So basically what that means is you could be really good at something. Okay. So let's say if you're a finance person or an accountant or whatever you are, right? That's your core skill. How can you complement that with another skill? And that combination of A and B will make you unique, right? So how do you start to stack and build your skills and then stack them in a way that really makes you unique, so that when you are officially not working in the organization, that combination can be a strong pivot for you, right? So for example, I'll give you an example. For example, if you're somebody who's in marketing, right? Like if you're a marketer, you combine that with, let's say, something that you and me have in common is about, speaking, let's say, combine that skill with professional speaking. Now you have a suddenly unique thing. You have the marketing skills and you speak very well. So you've got something, that combination itself will open doors for you or will make you do things that you really want to do. Or if you are, you are, let's say, again in product, but you're also a great program manager. That's a really nice combination. That you can build products and you can also do great program management. So look for those two complementary skills, and that you can build while you're still working, so that you have a unique combination.
Yeah, I think that is a fantastic way to say that, when you have more than one skills. And a lot of times I think people at mid of their careers, they are very busy with doing one thing. They don't even allocate some time to identify their passion and then identify, even enhance their other skills.
Absolutely.
So this is, I think, a very important point you made. Maybe can I borrow this idea and write in my book?
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you very much. And then
No worries.
also, when people go to their retirement age, how important it is to ensure that they are prepared for the blocks which they will come across in the future, because it's going to be a different phase, totally different phase of life, right?
Yeah. I would say best way to prepare is make sure you read leaders' blogs so that you know how to preempt any blocks anyway. But I think one needs to prepare before you go into that. And preparation would mean, again, talking just high level would be make sure, you are ready for that transition, because it's going to be a big shift. It's an identity shift, actually, literally, right? Be prepared, talk to people who've gone through it before, research, think about your routine, think about, your practices that you will do. So one really has to prepare. It's not like one fine day you get up and say, okay, now, I'm going to do things differently. One just has to be, because they're going to be shifts, right? There will be shifts, and there'll be huge shifts, as simple as maybe having a routine, or as simple as now your calendar being quite free versus before, right? Shifts like that. So you have to be prepared. I would say the best way would be talk to people who've gone through it before, prepare yourself, get a copy of the book. Those are some of the ways they can be better prepared.
Yeah. Thank you, Ritu, and we are coming towards an end of our conversation as well. And I want you ask five last few questions, and one of the which comes to my mind is, if you were to give an advice to your younger self, right, somebody who was just stepping into their leadership role, what would that be?
So I would have two advice for my younger self. One is enjoy the journey a bit more, and the other one is don't second guess yourself. Yeah, and I say enjoy the journey because for my work, I have traveled to so many places in the world, but most of the time I would just be in the hotel, get to my meeting, come back to the hotel, and then just work and then leave after 2 days. There's so many beautiful places I've been to, but I never took the opportunity to step out, to explore the place and things like that. Which I think if I had the wisdom that I had today, I would have definitely always, taken that half day and stepped out, I think, right? And the second thing is, my advice would be don't second guess yourself, because as I looked through my career, there were so many opportunities where I thought which I could have taken, but I just kind of held myself back. Oh, maybe I'm not ready for it, or maybe I'm not, yet there. And I kind of, missed them. So those two.
Very important two messages, I think, and even as alerts, some of the things we need to take on. And as the final question, your book is now out. It's recently your rewrite the rules, right? From where we can buy this book?
Oh, okay. So it's on Amazon. It's on Amazon across different countries across the world. So it is available there. And if there's any specific requirement that people needed, they can get in touch with me. I can make sure it gets delivered to them. In Southeast Asia, it is in bookstores, but like any bookstores, books are kept only for certain time, duration. So some of them will be there, not there, but Amazon would be the best
Yeah,
way.
we will make sure we leave the link below on the description, so
Sure.
that people can reach. If somebody want to reach out to you as a coach, as a speaker, and what is the best way to reach out to you?
The best way and the easy way to reach out to me is LinkedIn. You can look me up, Ritu G Mehrish on LinkedIn, or they can simply send me an email at ritu@ritumehrish.com. That's it.
Thank you, Ritu. I think it's been a wonderful conversation today. But before just we sign off, what's the rule that you will change or rewrite yourself now, which you are thinking?
Yeah. So one of the rules that I've recently changed is to accept that I can't do it all alone.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great realization. Even I realized that recently. Thank you very much, Ritu. And it's been a
so much,
pleasure
Yas.
having you on my podcast. And I hope we'll get another chance soon to talk about more about these things and your work.
Sure.
And our common interest of professional speaking. Thank you very much for being on the show.
No, thank you so much for having me on the show. It was lovely speaking to you, and thanks for giving me the platform. Wish you all the best.
Thank you. And for our listeners and viewers, don't forget to find out your why and purpose in your life, and try to adapt it. And on the way you go, if you get anywhere stuck, grab Ritu's book. I will highly recommend that, because that book, Unblock, has really Leader's Block has really actually impacted my life and helped me to come out of my block at certain point of my life, as we discussed in this episode. So until we come back, don't forget to be awesome and subscribe to Waves of Wisdom and never miss an episode in the future. So many exciting episodes are there to come. Thank you.